This is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. Inside these walls, you will find some of the most idolized artists of our time. Each one is a trailblazer. Each one has a story to tell. But sometimes, tragedy steps in to silence a voice that desperately needs to be heard. The O'Jays were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2005. Their iconic sound will forever be a part of R&B history. As we danced and sang along to hits like Love Train, few of us knew of what had become of one of the group's forgotten members. He was a rising star, a war veteran, a gifted artist, but he became a cold case. This is Frankie Little Jr., and this is his story. Frankie Little Jr. was born in Cleveland in 1943. During his youth, he learned to hone his craft of playing the guitar, writing songs, and singing rhythm and blues. In the 60s, the stars would align and guide the talented Little to join the up-and-coming Canton, Ohio group, the O'Jays. They had a smooth R&B sound with a mix of soul and funk. With their stylish arrangements and stirring lyrics, there was no holding this group back from bursting onto the scene. And on their journey to stardom, they would take Frankie Little Jr. with them. The O'Jays decided to venture out to LA. With all of their talent and a little luck, the group was determined to carve out their place in rock and roll history. Little, along with original band member Eddie LeVert, wrote the lyrics for such songs as Do the Jerk and Oh How You Hurt Me. While strumming his guitar, Frankie would be credited for his vocals on the 1962 song Down on the Corner. Lead singer Eddie LeVert remembered Frankie as sentimental, loving, and passionate about music. LeVert said, "He could have been a great entity in the music business." There was so much ahead for Frankie, but he wasn't happy in LA. He missed Cleveland and the woman who had captured his heart. So Frankie decided to leave the O'Jays behind and head back home. The members of the famed group said they never heard from Frankie again. We know that once Frankie returned to Cleveland, that he decided to enlist in the U.S. Army. He served for 2 years, including a stint in the Vietnam War. Investigators were able to track down Frankie's last known residence as somewhere in the vicinity of East 105th Street and Superior Avenue in Cleveland. Detectives believe that he was alive into at least the mid-70s. Very little is known about Frankie's life after Vietnam. Detectives could not find a paper trail once he returned to Cleveland. We don't know if he was suffering from PTSD, a condition that has plagued many veterans returning home from war. Was Frankie feeling detached from his family and life in general? We know that trauma can lead to outbursts of anger and aggression that are hard to control. So is this what was happening to him? If Frankie didn't reach out for help, it's quite possible that he could have turned to substance abuse. There are so many missing pieces in Frankie's life during the 1970s. Who were his friends? How did he make a living? Did Frankie get involved with some dangerous people? Frankie's brother Johnny had a brief conversation with him in 1976 in Cleveland. That was the last time his family heard from him before losing all contact.
Just started a new job, run into him and I showed him my check and he said, "Oh man, that's a nice book. Congratulations on your new job." And then we parted.
As time moved on, Frankie's family often thought of him. They wondered if he was okay. It seemed as if he had just dropped out of life. He just disappeared. Then in February of 1982, news broke of skeletal remains found in Twinsburg, Ohio. In a snowy wooded area behind a machine shop on Cannon Road lay garbage bags of human remains. Employees were dumping shavings in the woods when they made the gruesome discovery. The finding of a skull was so unexpected that the employees didn't believe it was real until they began showing it around. Once they realized what they had uncovered, the police were immediately notified. The scene was taped off, and a thorough search of the area turned up a garbage bag with more remains. A forensic anthropologist estimated that the remains had been in that location between 2 to 4 years. Though the remains were not a complete set, they were determined to be those of a black male. Further examination of the skeletal remains told a story of a horrific murder. The male's age was 20 to 35. He was 5 feet 6 inches tall, with curvature of the spine. Evidence showed that the victim had been bludgeoned, stabbed, and set on fire. The body was dismembered and put in garbage bags. There was no clothing to help identify the victim. He was just bagged up like garbage and thrown in a woods. Medical examiner Lisa Kohler ruled the death a homicide and worked with detectives to try and determine the identity of the man in question. Authorities appealed to the public to come forward with any information that might help them solve the murder. Sadly, they were met with silence. The murder of the unidentified man would go cold for more than 20 years. In 2009, Sergeant Greg Fikatic took another look at the case. He attempted to identify the man through DNA samples taken from the remains. The DNA profile was entered into the CODIS database in hopes of getting a hit. Unfortunately, Fikatic's efforts produced no results. In 2016, authorities tried yet again to identify the remains. Samantha Molnar, an artist with Ohio BCI, made a clay model of the skull. Once Molnar completed the reconstruction of the victim's facial features, a picture was posted of the model. Sadly, a public response was not forthcoming. Authorities found themselves again at a stalemate. Then in 2019, Twinsburg detective Eric Hendershot made a last-ditch effort to put a name to the remains. Hendershot reached out to the nonprofit group DNA Doe Project. The group uses genetic genealogy to help identify John and Jane Does nationwide. They compared DNA with those found in 2 public genealogy databases to try and find family members. Researchers were able to narrow the field and deliver one name to Hendershot. That name was Little. Now that the Twinsburg detective had the break in the case that he was looking for, he made a phone call to Margaret O'Sullivan, a possible relative of the victim. O'Sullivan told Hendershot that her cousin Frankie Little had been missing for many years. She said she wasn't sure how much time had passed since anyone in the family had seen him, but she did know that he had a brother living in Georgia. Using this information, Detective Hendershot was able to get a DNA sample to positively identify that the remains belonged to Frankie Little. O'Sullivan said, "It's amazing. We're glad that we have closure now. We know he's deceased." With a little more investigating, it was learned that Frankie had a daughter that died in 2012 and a son living in the Cleveland area. But what exactly happened to Frankie still remains a mystery. When we look at the gruesome way in which Frankie Little Jr. was murdered, we can't help but wonder if this crime was perpetrated by a serial killer. If Frankie was living on the streets, he would have been an easy mark for a psychopath. No one was looking for Frankie, and no one would notice if he went missing. In many ways, this perfectly matched Jeffery Dahmer's MO. In the 1990s, before Frankie's remains were identified, authorities investigated a possible link of the remains to the work of Dahmer. At the time, it was the only case in Ohio of a dismembered black male. Dahmer had confessed to Bath police that he had sex with a man, killed him, and buried him near his Bath Township home. He told investigators he later dug up the body because he was afraid it would be found. He said he broke apart the bones and scattered them. Investigators said that they believe the slaying occurred before Dahmer enlisted in the Army on January 12, 1979. They thought Dahmer met the victim at an Akron bar and took him back to his family home on Bath Road. Authorities did not specify the location where Dahmer said the remains might be found, or other places that they were looking to search. Over 100 skeletal fragments were later discovered at Dahmer's boyhood home in Bath Township. The 2 bags that contained Frankie's remains were found just 10 miles from Dahmer's home in Bath. Though never directly linked to Dahmer's list of victims, we must consider this as a possibility. Based on a report in 2022, it was documented that 20,617 people went missing in Ohio. Of the 2022 total, 15,555 were children. Some of the missing are found, and others return home on their own, but some become a victim, like Frankie. For a brief moment, Frankie Little Jr. was part of the OJ's rise to the top of R&B. He was a gifted musician, a veteran, and a father. Authorities are asking for help to solve this crime. If you have any information about Frankie Little Jr.'s murder, please contact the Twinsburg Police Department at 330-425-1234. Thank you for tuning in today. If you like our videos and would like to help our channel grow, please consider sharing this video with a friend. Also, if you aren't already subscribed to EOJ, please consider doing so. It's completely free, and it's the best way to stay in the loop about our channel and get notified when videos will be uploaded. As always, stay well and be safe. Until we see you again with another cold case, this has been Eye on Justice.